He had never thought his life would change in a single night. All his life, he had walked the streets of the city, keeping his head down, trying to survive. Jobs came and went, mostly small, hard work that paid little. He carried a quiet strength, one built from the constant need to stand on his own, to face life without expecting help from anyone. Despite his struggles, he had a kind heart, always ready to step in if someone was in trouble, even if it meant putting himself at risk. That evening, the city felt different. The sky was overcast, and the streets smelled faintly of rain and exhaust fumes. He had just finished a long shift, his hands rough and tired, and he was heading home through a quieter part of town. The streetlights flickered as he walked, and the shadows of buildings stretched long across the pavement. It was the kind of night that made people hurry past, heads down. Pretending they were not alone in the dark, he heard it before he saw it. A shout, sharp and panicked, echoing through the alley. Curiosity and instinct pulled him toward the sound. As he turned the corner, he saw a scene that made him freeze for a moment. A man in an expensive suit, clearly wealthy, was cornered by another figure. The attacker was rough, desperate, swinging fists with reckless abandon. The man in the suit tried to defend himself, but it was clear he was outmatched. He was being pushed back, his expensive shoes scraping against the pavement as he stumbled. Without thinking, he ran toward them. Adrenaline surged through him, washing away any thought of danger. He grabbed the attacker, pulling him off the man in the suit. The two struggled, and for a brief moment, it seemed like the attacker might break free and turn on him. He knew he had to act fast, had to find a way to protect the man before it was too late. In the chaos, the man in the suit moved in a way that almost made him lose his balance. In a split-second decision, something instinctive and unplanned happened. He leaned in and kissed the man's cheek. It wasn't a kiss of affection or romance. It was a move born out of pure instinct, a way to distract the attacker and create a moment of confusion. The attacker, stunned and unsure what had happened, hesitated just long enough for him to push the billionaire out of harm's way. The attacker ran, disappearing into the shadows of the alley. They were safe, but the world around them seemed to stop. The man in the suit froze, eyes wide, looking at him as if trying to understand what had just happened. He could feel the heartbeat pounding in his chest, a mix of fear, relief, and a strange embarrassment. The kiss had saved the moment, but it had also created a strange tension neither of them had expected. He stepped back, brushing his hands on his worn pants, trying to act casual, though he could feel the heat rising to his cheeks. He expected anger, perhaps an outburst, a slap, or at least a harsh word. Instead, the billionaire stood there, silent, clearly processing the event. For a moment, the street felt empty, the usual sounds of the city fading as they both remained frozen in that strange silence. Finally, the billionaire spoke, his voice calm but tinged with surprise. He asked why he had done it, why he risked himself for a man he didn't know. He tried to explain, to downplay his actions, to tell him it was just instinct, that anyone would have done the same. But the billionaire's gaze didn't waver. It was intense, curious, and something in it made him pause. There was no judgment, only a mix of fascination and respect that was hard to ignore. He tried to leave, to walk away and return to the simplicity of his life. But the billionaire called after him, insisting on knowing his name, wanting to find a way to thank him properly. He hesitated, torn between fear of attention and the strange pull of curiosity. Something about the man's presence was magnetic, drawing him into a world he had never imagined. He found himself agreeing to meet despite every instinct telling him to avoid it. The billionaire insisted, gently but firmly, that he owed him more than a quick thank you. The walk home felt longer than usual. His mind was racing, replaying the events in the alley over and over. How had it come to this? A kiss, an attack, a life saved in a way he could barely explain. He could still feel the heartbeat of the man he had saved, the shock and confusion lingering in the air. The thought of meeting him again stirred both anxiety and curiosity. It was a world he had never been part of, a world of wealth, influence, and complexity that seemed as dangerous as it was fascinating. At home, sat quietly, trying to make sense of everything. The city outside moved on as if nothing had happened, but his life felt irreversibly changed. He knew that meeting the billionaire again would not be simple. It could mean attention, rumors, or even trouble. But part of him also felt a spark of something new, a chance to step into a story larger than his own, to test courage and humanity in ways he had never imagined. Sleep came reluctantly that night, heavy with thoughts and questions. What kind of man was this billionaire? What would he want from him? Was this a fleeting moment of chaos, or the start of something that could change his life forever? The answers were unclear, but one thing was certain. The night had opened a door he could not close, and whatever came next would be unlike anything he had experienced before. Morning brought a mix of anticipation and dread. He dressed quickly, trying to shake off the lingering tension from the night before. The city looked different in the light of day, its streets alive with people going about their routines. But he carried a secret, a story that could not be told to anyone. It was his alone, a story of courage, instinct, and a single, unexpected act that might change everything. When the billionaire arrived at the agreed meeting place, he was nervous but curious. The man who had saved him was nothing like the people he usually met. There was no pretense, no concern for status or wealth, just a genuine, unassuming courage that stood out sharply against the backdrop of the city and the man's own luxurious life. The billionaire studied him, trying to understand the motivations behind the bravery, the quick thinking, and the bold, instinctive action that had saved him. The young man explained himself as best he could, shrugging off the significance of what he had done. He tried to make it sound casual, as if it were nothing extraordinary. But the billionaire was not convinced. He saw the honesty, the purity of intent, and the rare courage that came without expectation or reward. It was a quality that had become almost invisible in his world, and it struck a chord deep within him. Their conversation lasted hours, shifting from the incident itself to stories of life, struggle, and ambition. The young man shared pieces of his world, the hardships, the small victories, and the simple joys. The billionaire listened, intrigued, realizing how different their lives were, yet how connected they had become through a single act. It was a connection that neither fully understood. Both felt keenly. As the day ended, the young man walked away with a sense of awe and confusion. The billionaire had thanked him, yes, but more than that. He had acknowledged him as a person worthy of respect, courage, and attention. It was a recognition he had rarely received, and it left a lasting impression. He could not know what would come next, but he felt a strange sense of anticipation, a pull toward something unknown and remarkable. That night, as he prepared for bed, he thought about the kiss again. It had been impulsive, strange, and a little embarrassing. Yet it had saved a life and opened a door he had never imagined. He realized that sometimes life demanded bold action even when it made no sense, and that courage often came in unexpected forms. The night in the alley had been terrifying, confusing, and life-changing all at once. And it was only the beginning. The next day, he could hardly focus on anything else. The events of the alley felt like a dream, yet the memory of the billionaire's intense gaze lingered in his mind. He tried to go about his usual routine, walking the busy streets, stopping at the small shop he worked for part-time, and helping an elderly neighbor with groceries. But everything seemed different. There was a new weight in his chest, a sense that life had shifted in a way he could not yet understand. Meanwhile, the billionaire was also unsettled. He returned to his towering office building, a place of polished floors and constant meetings. But the image of the young man's bravery stayed with him. He thought about the kiss, the strange, instinctive action that had saved his life. It was not just the act itself, but the courage behind it, the willingness to step into danger without hesitation. He found himself reflecting on his own life, realizing that he had become isolated, surrounded by people who nodded and agreed, but rarely risked anything. He was used to control, to planning, to predictability. Yet this encounter had shaken him in ways he had not expected. Determined to find the man who had saved him, he instructed his assistant to track down any information from the area. He didn't want fame or recognition for himself, only a chance to express his gratitude properly. His assistant was hesitant, warning him that such a search could become complicated, but the billionaire insisted. There was something about this young man that went beyond heroics. There was a raw honesty and courage that drew him in. The young man, unaware of the effort to find him, was dealing with his own inner conflict. He didn't want attention or trouble. His life was simple, and he preferred it that way. He worried about what people would say, about how the story might spread. He feared being misunderstood, being judged for the impulsive kiss that had saved a life. Yet, a small part of him was curious. The billionaire had shown genuine interest in understanding him, and that was a rare feeling. He had rarely been seen for who he truly was, and the thought of someone wanting to know his story both excited and scared him. A few days later, the billionaire appeared at a local cafe, the place where the young man often went after work. He waited patiently, scanning the small crowd until his eyes found the young man sitting alone at a corner table, nursing a cup of coffee in a sense of quiet solitude. The young man noticed him immediately, his heart skipping a beat. He had expected some form of confrontation or awkwardness, but instead, the billionaire's expression was calm. Almost inviting, the billionaire approached, extending a hand in a gesture of trust and respect. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said simply. There was no grandeur, no pretense, just sincerity. The young man hesitated, unsure of how to respond. He nodded, words failing him for a moment, and gestured for the billionaire to sit. They began to talk, first cautiously, then with increasing openness. The young man shared small pieces of his life, the jobs he took to support his family, the struggles he faced in a city that often felt unforgiving, and the moments of small victories that kept him going. The billionaire listened, genuinely interested, asking questions not out of curiosity alone, but with a desire to understand the human experience behind the actions he had witnessed. The conversation shifted to the incident in the alley. The young man tried to explain to make it seem less significant than it had been. He wanted to downplay the kiss, to make it clear that it was nothing extraordinary, just a reflex in a moment of crisis. But the billionaire would not allow it. He insisted that what he had done required courage, presence of mind, and an extraordinary willingness to act without thought for self-preservation. The words made the young man uncomfortable, but a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. For the first time in a long while, someone had seen him truly, recognized his strength without expectation or judgment. Over the next few hours, they talked about life, dreams, and the unexpected turns that define a person. The billionaire shared stories from his world, a place filled with wealth, power, and responsibility, yet also loneliness. He spoke about the pressure to maintain a certain image, the isolation that came with influence, and the rare moments when someone's honesty and courage cut through the layers of pretense. The young man listened, fascinated by the contrast between their lives, yet feeling a sense of connection he had not anticipated. As the day wore on, the young man realized he was enjoying the conversation more than he expected. There was no judgment, no sense of obligation, only a genuine desire to connect. It was a strange new feeling, being acknowledged not for wealth, status, or appearance, but for the person he truly was. The billionaire's questions were thoughtful, probing, yet gentle, revealing a curiosity that went beyond simple thanks or social obligation. Eventually, the cafe began to empty. In the late afternoon, sunlight spilled across the floor, casting long shadows. The young man knew he had to leave, return to the simplicity of his life. Yet he felt a reluctance, a pull, to continue the conversation, to linger in a world so different from his own, yet strangely familiar in its human honesty. Before leaving, the billionaire handed him a small card, not as a business gesture, but as a personal note. "If you ever want to talk, or if you ever need help, I want you to have this," he said. The young man accepted it, feeling the weight of the paper, a symbol of trust and connection. He left the cafe with a mixture of pride, fear, and anticipation, unsure what the future held, but certain that his life had taken a turn he could not ignore. That night, he reflected on the day, replaying every word, every gesture. The billionaire had treated him with respect, not pity. He had listened, acknowledged, and seen him as a person, not just a hero from a random alley encounter. The thought brought a warmth to his heart. It's a rare feeling of being understood and valued. The billionaire, too, could not stop thinking about the young man. He returned to his penthouse, the city lights flickering below, feeling a sense of intrigue and admiration. He had met many people, many who claimed courage and compassion, but few had demonstrated it so vividly and without expectation. The young man's presence had stirred something within him, a reminder that life was not just about control or wealth, but about connection, bravery, and the unexpected ways humans could impact one another. Over the next week, they began meeting more often, cautiously at first, then with a growing ease. Walks in the park, brief visits to the local shops, and conversations over coffee became routine. The young man learned more about the billionaire's world, while the billionaire discovered the challenges and resilience of a life lived without privilege. They shared stories of family, past struggles, and small dreams that never seemed achievable. In these moments, both found a sense of companionship that neither had anticipated. Rumors began to circulate, whispers among acquaintances, but the young man paid little attention. He focused on the authenticity of the moments he shared, on the courage it had taken to step into the alley, and the honesty that had followed. The billionaire, aware of the attention their friendship drew, remained protective, insisting on privacy and understanding, respecting the young man's boundaries. One afternoon, as they walked through a quiet street, the billionaire paused and said, "You know, most people would never do what you did. Not many have that instinct, that courage."
No?
The young man shrugged, trying to minimize the importance, but the billionaire insisted, eyes serious. It wasn't just the act. It was who you are, the way you think, the way you see the world. That is rare, and it matters more than you realize. The words stayed with the young man long after they parted ways. He realized that courage was not just about dramatic moments, but about consistency, honesty, and the willingness to act even when the world might judge. The billionaire had not only saved him from danger, but it opened a door to a perspective and recognition he had never known as the week drew to a close. The young man understood that their connection was more than gratitude. It was respect, understanding, and a shared human experience that transcended wealth or status. He felt a growing curiosity about what their bond could become, yet he remained grounded. Aware of the complexities that lay ahead by the time he returned home that evening, he carried with him a sense of anticipation and reflection. The world was no longer just the streets he walked every day. There were new possibilities, new relationships, and a reminder that courage and humanity could intersect in the most unexpected ways. The billionaire had shown him that even a single bold act could ripple through life in ways unimaginable, and he felt both humbled and inspired. That night, he lay awake, thinking of the alley, the kiss, and the conversations that had followed. The experience had changed him, made him see the world and himself differently. He knew that this was only the beginning, that life had opened a door he could not close, and that whatever happened next would test him, challenge him, and perhaps reward him in ways he could never have foreseen. As the days passed, the young man found himself gradually stepping into a world he had never imagined. It was subtle at first. A walk through a quiet park with the billionaire, a conversation over a simple meal, a moment of laughter that felt genuine and unforced. The world of wealth and luxury remained distant, but the billionaire's presence provided a bridge, a window into a life that was both fascinating and overwhelming. The billionaire began to share pieces of his life in a way that was rare for him. He spoke about the constant pressure of meetings, decisions that affected thousands, and the loneliness that often accompanied influence and money. He revealed moments of self-doubt and vulnerability, something the young man had never expected. For someone so powerful, it was astonishing to see such human fragility. The young man listened, offering his thoughts when asked, not with judgment, but with simple honesty that seemed to comfort the billionaire. During one afternoon, they visited a charitable foundation the billionaire supported. The young man had never been to a place like it before. Children laughed and played, volunteers moved with purpose, and the energy was different from the harsh streets he knew so well. Watching the billionaire interact with the children, His concern, genuine, made the young man see another side of him. He realized that wealth did not remove humanity, but it could amplify it. For better or worse, the young man shared his own experiences, not of luxury or comfort, but of struggle, perseverance, and the simple joys that kept him going. The billionaire was fascinated by his perspective, often asking questions to understand how someone could find happiness and strength with so little. Their conversations were a dance between worlds, one grounded in reality and the other in privilege, yet both filled with honesty and curiosity. Rumors started to circulate, whispered in offices, cafes, and social gatherings. People noticed the billionaire's unusual interest in someone outside his usual circle. Some were skeptical, some amused, but others were genuinely intrigued. The young man, however, paid little attention. He valued the moments of genuine connection more than the gossip that could follow. What mattered was the bond forming between them, a bond built on courage, respect, and understanding. One evening, they sat together on a quiet terrace overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like stars, and a cool breeze carried the scent of rain from earlier in the day. The billionaire turned to the young man and said, "I don't know anyone like you. Most people see the world differently, and few act as you did that night. It was reckless, yes, but brave, and I can't stop thinking about it." The young man felt a mix of embarrassment and pride. He shrugged, trying to minimize his actions, saying it was instinct, nothing more. But the billionaire shook his head. It wasn't just instinct. It was integrity, courage, and something rare. You see the world differently, and that is why I want to know you better. These words lingered, shaping the young man's thoughts and feelings. He began to understand that their connection was more than circumstance. It was mutual recognition of character and humanity. The billionaire, despite his wealth and influence, was drawn to someone who represented honesty, resilience, and the kind of bravery that could not be taught. Over time, their meetings became more frequent. Simple walks, coffee shops, and quiet conversations were now accompanied by small adventures into the billionaire's world. They visited art galleries, attended small events, and even went on brief trips to the countryside. The young man marveled at the stark contrasts between his life and the billionaire's, but he never felt out of place. The billionaire's attentiveness and respect made him feel welcome, valued, and understood. During one trip, the young man witnessed a side of the billionaire he had never imagined. In a quiet moment, the billionaire admitted feeling trapped by expectations and public scrutiny. He confessed that trust was rare in his world, and friendship even rarer. The young man listened, understanding in a way few others could. He offered words of encouragement and empathy, not condescension. Helping the billionaire feel grounded in a reality often hidden beneath wealth and influence, their bond deepened, becoming a source of strength for both. The young man's courage and perspective reminded the billionaire of the value of authenticity and connection. For the young man, it's the billionaire's openness and willingness to share his world offered a glimpse into possibilities previously unimaginable. They became companions not because of necessity, but because of mutual respect and understanding. However, the growing connection was not without challenges. The young man struggled with maintaining his independence while navigating a world so different from his own. He feared being swallowed by the billionaire's influence or losing the simplicity that defined him. At the same time, the billionaire wrestled with societal expectations and the whispers of those who questioned his judgment. One afternoon, while walking through a quiet street lined with cafes and small shops, the billionaire turned to the young man and said, "I've met many people, but few have left a mark like you. Your courage, honesty, and resilience. They are rare. I value you, not for what you can do, but for who you are." The young man felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of pride, humility, and connection. It was the first time someone had acknowledged his true self without expectation, without judgment, and without pretense. He realized that their bond was transforming both of them, creating a space where authenticity mattered more than wealth or status. As their time together continued, they faced moments of doubt and reflection. The young man questioned whether he could truly belong in this new world, while the billionaire wondered if his attention and admiration were fair or if they would lead to misunderstanding. Yet, they persisted, drawn by the human connection that had formed, a bond stronger than circumstance or societal expectation. One evening, after a long walk, the young man said, "I never expected any of this. I didn't think my life would ever touch yours, and now it feels like everything has changed." The billionaire smiled, a rare, genuine smile. Life is unpredictable. Courage, honesty, and instinct can lead to connections we never imagine. That night, you saved me, but you also changed my world. For that, I will always be grateful. The young man nodded, understanding the weight of those words. It was more than gratitude. It was recognition, respect, and the promise of a bond that could withstand the challenges ahead. The alley, the kiss, and the courage it took had set in motion a relationship that neither could have foreseen. One that would test them, challenge them, and ultimately transform their lives as they parted ways that evening. The young man walked home with a sense of anticipation and reflection. The city felt alive and full of possibility. He realized that bravery was not just about moments of danger, but about honesty, integrity, and the willingness to act in the face of uncertainty. The billionaire had shown him a world of opportunities, yet it was the human connection between them that mattered most. That night, he lay awake, thinking about the events that had unfolded. The alley, the kiss, the conversations, and the growing bond all had shifted his perspective. He understood that courage and connection could come from unexpected places, and that life had a way of intertwining paths in ways that defied logic. The young man closed his eyes, feeling a mixture of excitement, apprehension, and hope. The story was far from over. He was ready to see where this new journey would lead. Word of the young man and the billionaire's unusual connection began to spread. Quietly at first, people whispered in offices, cafes, and social circles, speculating about the daring rescue in the alley and the strange bond that had developed afterward. The story soon reached wider audiences, and the unusual friendship became a topic of curiosity. Some were intrigued by the idea of courage and human connection transcending wealth and status, while others mocked it. Unable to understand how such worlds could intersect, the young man felt a mixture of apprehension and disbelief. He had never sought attention, never wanted to be the subject of gossip or speculation. Yet, the events that unfolded in the alley had set him apart, and now there was no ignoring the public interest. Despite his fears, he remained grounded, focusing on the genuine bond he shared with the billionaire and the conversations that had transformed his perspective. The billionaire, aware of the attention, faced his own challenges. He had always been in the public eye, but this situation felt different. It was personal, and the curiosity of others brought a new kind of scrutiny. He found himself reflecting on trust, boundaries, the responsibility he carried not only in business but in human relationships. The young man had saved his life, and now their connection was being tested in ways neither had anticipated. One afternoon, the young man received an unexpected visit from a journalist. The reporter was eager to capture the story of the alley, the kiss, and the friendship that had developed. The young man declined to comment, insisting that the story was personal and not for public consumption. He felt protective of the bond they had formed, understanding that attention could complicate matters and possibly undermine the authenticity they had built, despite the public interest. The billionaire remained steadfast in his support of the young man. He ensured privacy, shielding him from intrusive questions and gossip. He valued their connection beyond what others could see or understand. For him, the courage, honesty, and authenticity of the young man were rare treasures in a world where pretense often dominated. The young man continued to navigate his daily life, balancing ordinary responsibilities with the extraordinary experience of being connected to someone so influential. He visited his usual haunts, helped neighbors, and worked part-time jobs. Yet the knowledge that someone of the billionaire's world valued him created a subtle but powerful change. He walked with more confidence, spoke with more assurance, and carried himself differently, not because of wealth or status, but because of recognition and respect. Their meetings continued, each encounter deepening their understanding of each other. The billionaire shared stories of the pressures he faced, the difficult decisions, and the loneliness of leadership. The young man offered perspective rooted in resilience, simplicity, and human connection. Through these exchanges, they both learned from one another, realizing that courage and honesty were valuable in every context, whether in the alley, the office, or the broader world. One afternoon, while walking along a quiet riverbank, the billionaire paused and said, "People will talk. Some will misunderstand, some will mock, and some will admire. But what matters is what we know is true." That night, and since then, you've shown something rare: courage, integrity, honesty. Those qualities are more valuable than any wealth or influence I possess. The young man listened, humbled, and encouraged. He realized that the billionaire's words were more than praise. They were recognition of his character, a validation that his life choices, struggles, and instincts had meaning. It was a moment of deep human connection, where status and social expectation fell away, leaving only the truth of shared experience and mutual respect. As the story continued to circulate, the young man began receiving unexpected support. Neighbors, colleagues, and friends expressed admiration, some even inspired by his actions. While he remained modest, the impact of his bravery and honesty became evident. The kiss in the alley, initially a moment of instinct and confusion, had evolved into a symbol of courage, humanity, and the unexpected ways one life could touch another. Yet not all attention was positive. Some critics questioned motives, others mocked the unusual scenario. The young man faced challenges, balancing the intrusion of public curiosity with his desire to maintain normalcy. He leaned on the billionaire for guidance and support, finding reassurance in their shared understanding. The billionaire, too, navigated his own public image, defending the young man when necessary, and making it clear that respect and gratitude transcended social expectation. Through it all, their bond remained strong. They found joy in shared experiences, from simple walks to quiet conversations. They learned to trust each other in ways that went beyond circumstance or social status. The young man realized that courage was not just in heroic acts, but in honesty, integrity, and the willingness to connect deeply with another human being. The billionaire learned that wealth and influence could never replace genuine connection and trust. As weeks turned into months, the public's fascination gradually shifted from curiosity to admiration. People began to see the story not as a scandal or oddity, but as a testament to the power of bravery, human instinct, and the unexpected bonds that can form between people from different worlds. The young man, though still cautious, began to accept that his life had changed, not because of fame or recognition, but because of the profound human connection he had formed. One evening, as they sat together on the terrace overlooking the city lights, the billionaire said quietly, "That night you saved me. But in many ways, I think I've learned from you just as much as you've learned from me. The courage, the honesty, the way you see the world, it's rare, and it matters more than most people realize." The young man nodded, feeling a sense of warmth and fulfillment. He understood that their relationship was not about wealth, status, or public opinion. It was about human connection, mutual respect, and the recognition that bravery could manifest in unexpected ways. The alley, the kiss, and the courage it represented had set in motion a journey neither of them could have predicted, one that would continue to shape their lives. That night, the young man reflected on the events that had unfolded. The public scrutiny, the whispers, and the curiosity of others were now background noise. What mattered most was the bond he shared with the billionaire, the trust and understanding that had developed, and the realization that life's most meaningful connections often come from moments of courage and authenticity. He felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that their friendship had the strength to endure challenges, misunderstandings, and the unpredictability of the world. As he lay in bed, he thought about the alley, the kiss, and the bravery that had brought them together. He understood that life could change in a single instant, that courage was not just about heroic acts, but about honesty, integrity, and the willingness to act without expectation. The bond he had formed with the billionaire was a reminder that human connection transcends circumstance, and that sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin in the most ordinary places. time passed, and the connection between the young man and the billionaire grew stronger. What had started as a moment of instinct and courage in a dark alley had evolved into a bond that neither of them could have imagined. The young man had stepped into a world he never thought he would enter, while the billionaire had opened himself to genuine, human connection in a way that was rare for him. The young man continued his daily life, helping neighbors, working part-time, and navigating the challenges of the city streets. Yet, the awareness that someone of great influence and wealth valued him for who he was brought a quiet confidence he had never experienced. He was no longer just surviving. He was living, aware that his courage and honesty mattered beyond the limits of his everyday life. The billionaire, meanwhile, faced the complexities of his world with renewed perspective. Meetings and decisions continued, but he approached them differently now. Informed by the clarity and resilience he had witnessed in the young man, he found himself valuing authenticity over appearances, understanding that the people around him, no matter their status, carried lessons and strength he could learn from. They began working together on small projects, charitable initiatives that combined the billionaire's resources with the young man's grounded perspective. Their efforts were not grand gestures aimed at publicity, but genuine attempts to make a difference in ways that mattered to them both. The young man helped connect with communities often overlooked, while the billionaire provided the means to create real impact. Through this collaboration, their bond deepened further. Built on trust, shared goals, and mutual respect. One day, while visiting a local school to support a small literacy program, the young man witnessed the impact of their efforts firsthand. Children were laughing, learning, and dreaming in ways they never had before. The billionaire observed quietly, moved by the tangible results and the joy on the faces of the young participants. For both of them, it was a reminder that courage and humanity could create ripples far beyond a single moment. The public had begun to recognize their story as more than a sensational headline. News outlets and social media praised the young man's bravery and highlighted the billionaire's commitment to meaningful change. They were careful to respect privacy, but the positive attention underscored the value of courage, honesty, and human connection. The young man, once wary of public scrutiny, realized that their story could inspire others to act bravely and with kindness. Despite the growing recognition, challenges remained. The young man still feared losing his independence, worried about being overshadowed by wealth and influence. The billionaire wrestled with societal expectations and the judgments of those who misunderstood their bond. Yet each challenge only reinforced their connection. They communicated openly, sharing fears and doubts, supporting each other through the uncertainties and complexities of their lives. One evening, as they walked along the quiet city streets, the billionaire said, "You changed something in me. That night, I was just a man in danger, but you reminded me what courage, honesty, and human connection really mean. I see the world differently now because of you." The young man smiled, humbled. "I didn't expect any of this. I was just trying to help. But I've learned a lot too. You've shown me that even in a world so different from mine, people can be kind, genuine, and trustworthy." They shared a moment of quiet understanding, a recognition that the extraordinary journey they had embarked on was more than circumstances. It was about shared humanity, courage, and the unpredictable ways life could connect people from different worlds. The kiss in the alley had been the catalyst, but the bond that followed was sustained by honesty, empathy, and mutual respect. As time went on, their friendship became an anchor in both their lives. The young man found confidence and purpose he had never imagined, while the billionaire discovered the rare value of a genuine connection beyond wealth, status, and expectation. They continued to collaborate on meaningful initiatives, support each other through personal challenges, and simply enjoy the moments of companionship that had become invaluable. The young man often reflected on that night in the alley, realizing that a single act of courage could set in motion a chain of events that would transform lives. The kiss, initially a confusing and instinctive gesture, became a symbol of bravery, trust, and the unexpected ways human connections could shape destiny. It reminded him that life often demanded bold action, and that integrity and honesty could leave a lasting impact far beyond the immediate moment. The billionaire, too, thought about the encounter. Recognizing that the young man had taught him lessons he could not have learned in boardrooms or luxurious offices, courage, compassion, and authenticity had proven more powerful than wealth or influence alone. Their story was no longer just about a daring rescue. It was about the human capacity to connect, trust, and inspire change together. They faced challenges, celebrated victories, and continued to build a life enriched by mutual respect and understanding. The public, now familiar with their story, saw them as an example of what could happen when courage met opportunity and when genuine. Human connection transcended societal boundaries. The young man became an inspiration, not because of wealth or fame, but because of bravery and integrity, while the billionaire demonstrated that influence was most meaningful when paired with empathy and respect. In the quiet moments, when the city slept and life seemed to pause, they would reflect on the journey that had begun in a dark alley. They laughed, shared stories, and offered each other reassurance and companionship. The bond was not about obligation or expectation, but about the recognition of courage and the enduring value of human connection. The young man realized that he had grown in ways he could not have anticipated. He had faced danger, acted with instinct and bravery, and discovered a new world while remaining true to himself. He understood that courage was not just about grand gestures, but about living honestly, embracing risks when necessary, and connecting with others with authenticity and respect. The billionaire, equally transformed, recognized that life's most meaningful connections often come unexpectedly. He learned that true friendship could not be bought, and that courage and honesty could open doors to experiences and relationships beyond imagination. Their bond, born of instinct, bravery, and empathy, had grown into a partnership that enriched both of their lives. As the story drew on, it became clear that the night in the alley was more than an isolated event. It was a turning point, a moment that had forged a relationship capable of weathering challenges and celebrating triumphs. The young man and the billionaire had discovered that, despite differences in background, wealth or circumstance, human connection, courage, and honesty were universal forces that could shape destiny. And so, life continued for both of them, intertwined by a bond that began in danger and grew through trust, understanding, and shared experiences. The young man had stepped into a new world while staying true to himself. The billionaire had opened his life to genuine companionship. Together, they exemplified the power of courage, the importance of authenticity, and the enduring impact of human connection. The kiss that had saved a life was now remembered not just as an act of instinct, but as the beginning of a story that would inspire, challenge, and change them both forever.